Welcome to the deep dive. You've brought us a really fascinating source this time. Excerpts from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. We're zeroing in on chapter 5.
Indeed, yeah, you've absolutely hit on the pivotal moment. So this deep dive, we're really going to explore Victor Frankenstein's, well, his act of creation and, the immediate fallout, the psychological impact. Our mission, basically, is to dissect that emotional earthquake that just erupts within him right there.
Absolutely. And just think about the weight of it. I mean, years of obsessive work, all leading to this single instant. The anticipation must have been, well, unbelievable.
Yeah.
But as we're about to see, the reality is dramatically, terrifyingly different from what Victor imagined. You can almost feel that tension crackling, can't you?
Okay, so let's unpack that initial scene. Shelley kicks it off with a dreary night in November. What kind of atmosphere does that create? For you.
Right away, it sets that classic Gothic tone, doesn't it? It's like 1 a.m, rain lashing the windows, that perfect picture of foreboding. And Victor's candle is sputtering, almost dead. He's surrounded by his instruments of life, which sounds more like, dark alchemy than early science.
Right.
And he's in this state of intense anxiety, almost physical agony, as he's about to, animate his creation.
What's really fascinating is that contrast. Think about the incredibly detailed, careful work he must have done assembling this being.
Yeah.
Yet the actual moment of creation is just shrouded in this chaotic, emotionally fraught atmosphere. And then the creature stirs. What exactly does Victor see?
Well, in that dim, dying light, the creature's dull yellow eye just opens. It's not presented as some triumphant awakening, is it? There's something just inherently unsettling from the get-go.
Definitely not triumphant.
The creature breathes hard, its whole body convulses. It's a far cry from the idealized, beautiful thing Victor had pictured.
Which brings us right to the core of this chapter, doesn't it? That huge gap between Victor's hopes and the stark horror of what he's made.
Yeah.
What were his intentions beforehand?
He specifically says he picked features he thought were beautiful. He wasn't just randomly sticking parts together. He had this vision, this idea of a proportionate, beautiful being.
Right.
But the second it comes to life, that illusion just shatters violently. He cries out, "Beautiful, great God!" But it's clearly a cry of, total shock and disgust, not joy.
And Shelley gives us this very detailed, almost gruesome description of the creature's appearance. That's obviously the trigger for Victor's revulsion. What parts of that description really stand out? Why those details, do you think?
It's the disturbing closeness of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
The yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath, like you can almost see inside.
Yeah, very visceral.
And then these clashing elements, the lustrous black and flowing hair and pearly whiteness of the teeth next to the watery eyes, almost the same color as the dun white sockets, the shriveled complexion and those straight black lips. It's this jarring mix of things that should be attractive, but together they create something deeply wrong. Maybe Shelley's getting at the idea that real beauty isn't just adding up attractive parts. It's about, the whole harmony and life of a being.
That's a really interesting point. It touches on that whole idea of the uncanny, right? That unease when something is almost human, but just off. The creature's the perfect example. And Victor's reaction is immediate, absolutely immediate.
Oh, completely. A total instantaneous flip. He says, "The beauty of the dream vanished, and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. All those years of work, that burning ambition, just evaporates in a second." He can't even stand to look at the life he just created.
So this first response is flight. He literally runs away. Where does he go? What's his state of mind then?
He bolts from the lab, paces frantically in his bedroom for ages, totally unable to calm down. Eventually, he's just so exhausted he collapses onto his bed, still dressed, desperate for, any kind of escape and sleep.
But sleep doesn't help, does it?
No, it offers no escape at all. It's filled with these incredibly vivid, really disturbing nightmares.
Yeah, those nightmares are so revealing. They give us a direct window into his psychological chaos. What are the key bits in those dreams?
The first one is particularly awful. He dreams he's hugging Elizabeth. She's vibrant, healthy. But when he kisses her, her lips turn livid, like death. And she transforms into the decaying corpse of his mother with grave worms crawling on her shroud. It's such a powerful image, life and love just corrupted by death. It feels like a direct result of his guilt, for messing with the natural order.
It's a potent symbol, absolutely, violating nature and the potential fallout for the people he cares about. And the horror doesn't stop when he wakes up, right? He's confronted by something even more immediate.
No way. He jolts awake from that vision, drenched in cold sweat, shaking uncontrollably. And there, in the pale moonlight, he sees it, the creature, standing at his bedside, holding back the curtain.
Oh, wow.
Its eyes are fixed on him. It makes these weird guttural sounds, and there's this horrible grin on its face. In his terrified state, Victor can only see it as a threat, a direct threat.
It's pure primal fear. This thing he made, the embodiment of his arrogance, looming over him when he's totally vulnerable. What's his reaction then?
Doesn't even think. He flees again, rushes down the stairs, hides in the courtyard. He spends the rest of the night just tormented, jumping at every sound, terrified this demoniacal corpse he's unleashed is about to reappear.
His language gets really extreme here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Very emotionally charged. He keeps dwelling on the sheer horror of how it looks.
He does. He says no mortal could possibly stand the sight of that face. He even says a reanimated mummy wouldn't be as hideous. He thinks about how it looked ugly even when unfinished, but the animation, the movement, turned it into something worse than anything Dante could imagine. It really shows his total gut-level revulsion.
And this overwhelming reaction, it takes a massive toll on him physically and emotionally throughout that night, right? How does Shelley show his suffering?
Ugh, she paints a picture of complete misery. His heart's pounding so hard he can feel it in his arteries. Then moments later, he feels like he's going to collapse from weakness. And mixed in with all that physical pain is the crushing bitterness of disappointment.
Yeah.
His dreams, the things that drove him for so long, have become his personal hell. It happened so fast, he says, a complete overthrow.
Even the morning coming doesn't bring any comfort.
Yeah.
The outside world seems to reflect his inner turmoil.
No, even the dawn is dismal and wet. It mirrors his sleeplessness, the ache in his eyes. He sees the church clock strike sixth, marking time, but he still can't face going back to his apartment, the scene of the horror.
Yeah.
So he just wanders the streets aimlessly, driven by sheer terror, trying to outrun the image of the creature he thinks is hiding around every corner.
And while he's wandering, Shelley puts in that really significant quote from Coleridge's Ancient Mariner, doesn't she?
Yeah.
What's the importance of those lines here?
The lines Victor quotes about walking in fear and dread, always feeling like some frightful fiend is chasing close behind. They perfectly capture his state of mind. He is completely haunted by his creation, always looking over his shoulder, literally and metaphorically. It adds this really rich literary layer, connecting his experience to that classic story of guilt and consequences.
So this intense period of fear, isolation,
Yeah.
it's suddenly broken by Henry Clerval showing up. How does that happen?
Victor's just kind of lingering near the inn where the coaches arrive, almost without thinking. He sees the Swiss diligence pull up and recognizes Clerval. His reaction is instantaneous and overwhelming.
Relief.
Massive relief. He shouts, "Nothing could equal my delight on seeing Clerval." Just like that. The horror seems to lift for a second, and he feels for the first time in ages this calm and serene joy.
Clerval's arrival is such a stark contrast to everything Victor just went through. What's Clerval's side of it? Seeing his friend again?
Clerval's equally thrilled. He's super happy. Tells Victor all about his journey, how hard it was to convince his dad to let him study instead of going into business. He arrives full of energy and excitement, a total, almost painful contrast to Victor's wrecked state.
And Clerval spots immediately how bad Victor looks, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, the change is so obvious. Clerval stops short, says how incredibly unwell Victor looked, how thin, pale, the dark circles under his eyes, says he looks like he hasn't slept in days.
And Victor's excuse?
He kind of vaguely blames it on being totally absorbed in his studies, says hopefully those demanding tasks are over now. Obviously, he can't admit the real, horrifying reason.
But even though Clerval's arrival is a huge relief, Victor's still terrified about the creature, isn't he? That fear is still there.
Absolutely. Even with Clerval right there, this deep fear that the creature might still be in his apartment just grips him. The thought makes him shudder. His main goal becomes making sure Clerval doesn't see it. So he makes up an excuse for Clerval to wait downstairs while he frantically checks his rooms.
And what does he find? How does he react?
To his immense, almost unbelievable relief, the apartment, the bedroom, both totally empty. He can barely believe it. He's so overwhelmed by this sudden break from terror, he claps his hands with pure joy and rushes back down to Clerval.
But his relief comes out in a really extreme, almost unsettling way, right? It's not quiet happiness. It's almost manic.
Exactly. When they go back up to Victor's rooms, even while breakfast is being served, Victor just can't contain himself. His joy is frantic. His flesh tingles with excessive sensitiveness. His pulse is racing. He's jumping around, clapping his hands, bursting into loud, almost hysterical laughter.
Clerval must be completely baffled, maybe even worried by this sudden extreme behavior. How does he react?
Well, at first, maybe he thinks it's just joy at seeing him again. But as he watches Victor, he notices this disturbing wildness in his eyes. Victor's crazy laughter actually starts to frighten and amaze him. He gets really concerned, asks Victor what's wrong, pleads with him to stop laughing like that, saying again how sick he looks.
And this is the point where Victor just breaks, isn't it? The trauma finally overwhelms him.
Yes. In that moment, full of emotion, Victor covers his eyes, convinced he sees the dreaded specter glide into the room. He screams for help, thinking the monster is grabbing him, and then he just collapses into a violent fit.
It's devastating for Clerval. He expected this happy reunion, and suddenly his friend is having a complete breakdown. What follows is this long period of sickness for Victor, right? With Clerval looking after him.
Exactly. Victor gets a severe nervous fever, keeps him bedridden for months. Clerval becomes his constant selfless nurse, just tirelessly caring for him, nursing him back to a very fragile state of health. We find out later Clerval even hid how bad it was from Victor's family to save them worry.
And during this illness, Victor's mind is still stuck on the monster, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Even delirious, the terrifying image of the creature is always there, and he just raves about it constantly. At first, Clerval understandably thinks it's just fever dreams.
You would.
But Victor is so persistent, so focused on this one awful subject, that Clerval eventually gets this chilling feeling that something truly dreadful must have actually happened.
Victor's recovery is slow, difficult, with setbacks. Shelley uses the imagery of spring to show him getting better, doesn't she?
She does. Victor remembers that first moment he could actually look at nature and feel pleasure again, seeing the dead leaves melt away, new plants budding. The arrival of divine spring becomes this powerful symbol for his own internal recovery. He starts to feel little bits of joy and affection again, and that heavy gloom that had crushed him begins to lift.
And as he gets better, he tells Clerval how grateful he is and how guilty he feels about the burden he put on him during the illness.
He does. He recognizes the huge sacrifice Clerval made, giving up his whole winter to nurse him instead of studying. Victor feels terrible about disappointing his friend like that.
Clerval's response is just typically kind and understanding, though. He reassures Victor, says the only repayment he wants is to see him fully well, and then he gently brings up Victor's family.
Yeah, Clerval tactfully mentions that his father and his cousin Elizabeth would be thrilled to get a letter from him. They're really worried because he's been silent for so long. And then he revealed he actually have a letter for Victor, a long-awaited one from Elizabeth herself.
So as this really intense chapter ends, Victor is finally starting to recover physically, and that connection to his family is being reestablished, but always with that dark shadow of his creation and the deep psychological trauma hanging over him.
Precisely. The emotional journey in this chapter for Victor is just this dramatic, devastating plunge. From that almost godlike excitement of creation down to crushing horror, paralyzing fear, a brief moment of hope with Clerval, then total collapse.
Yeah, this chapter is undeniably a massive turning point in the story. It's the shattering of Victor's huge ambition and the real start of the psychological torment that's going to follow him. The consequences aren't just external, they're deep inside him, immediate and utterly devastating.
So, as you think about this incredibly powerful moment in Frankenstein, maybe consider this. What basic responsibility does a creator have for what they create, regardless of their original intentions? And what kind of unforeseen, maybe catastrophic consequences can come from even the most ambitious, well-meaning projects? What parts of Victor's initial dream, his focus on superficial beauty, idealized proportions, what blinded him to the potential for such a truly horrific outcome? Both in the thing he made and in his own instant visceral reaction to it. It's a question that definitely sticks with you.